Alright, Ryca fans, this is the CS Tracker assembly build video. The CS1 video is going to account for about 80% of your build. This is primarily going to focus on the seat and the exhaust and a couple other parts. Get yourself a climber manual if you don't have one with the bobber on the front. This one will help you with torque specs and wiring diagrams and such. Alright, the first step is going to be, if you're going to install the super bars and the gauge bracket, you're going to install it similar to the CS1, but instead on top of the actual triple tree instead of the bottom. Here's a shot of the bracket, and then you attach the gauge with the hardware included with the gauge. If you're going to use the dual gauge, it's the same process. We have both options available, tack and speedo, single or dual. First step is going to be cutting the seat foam. You want to put some cardboard down and mark the template outline with a paint pen or a Sharpie. You can print the template from our website, or you can make your own template with tracing paper. You want to use a sharp X-Acto knife when you do this. You going to want to go really, really slow and try to cut this template in one pass to avoid tearing the edges. You want to go real slow, take your time with this, and make sure you use a really sharp blade. It's important that you try to do it in one pass to avoid different angles on the foam with the blade. After you finish cutting the foam out with the included template from our website or with tracing paper, after you've cut that, you're going to want to sand the edges, and you can start with 80 grit paper, sandpaper, and a rubber block, or a piece of wood if you don't have a rubber block, and then you're going to want to finish it with 220 grit. Take your time with the sanding. Here's the freshly cut, and then here's a shot checking the fitment on the seat before you start sanding. It's important to take your time with the sanding. You want to radius the edges a little bit. So here we're using the 80 grit and taking down the edges just to smooth them out. And then you can round the edges with the sandpaper as well to the top edge to have a clean, flush look. Once again, 80 grit works well in the beginning, and then you can finish it off with something finer. 220 works fine. And here's a shot of the sanded edge. See how we radius the top edge a little bit to make it smooth. You're not going to glue it down yet. So the next step is to attach the taillight with the stock hardware to our bracket and test fit it on the seat. Tape it into position and mark the two middle outside holes. This is where you're going to be drilling. Once you mark those holes, you're going to drill the fiberglass with a pilot hole, 5/32, and then you're going to drill it secondary with a 5/16. So it's a 5/32 pilot hole, and then drill it with a 5/32, with a 5/16 final. Don't glue it in yet. Just test to see if your rubber rivet nuts fit. And once they fit, you'll know you can set that aside. We're going to glue it in and attach it with those bolts later. You may want to mark the seat when it's in place, the bracket, so you have its guidelines for later when you glue it down. Next, you're going to take the seat strap that we include and the seat bracket, and you're going to tighten those up by hand with the M8x25 cap screws, and then the M6x10s in the front. Here we fit the M8x25 cap screws to the bottom of the battery box, same as in the CS1 video, through the tank, and at the top with the lock nuts. The lock nuts secure the seat pan into position, same as the CS1. Now with your seat strap in place on the back, lightly tightened, you can put the rubber blocks into position to see the fitment of them on the bike. The rubber blocks are going to hold the seat in place. They're going to be basically supports for the rear of the seat. The bracket pops up to the top, and where the rubber blocks hit the seat, you may want to sand the radius of the fiberglass underside so they sit smoothly against the seat. Make sure there's a gap in front of your seat so you have enough room to fit a wrench between the seat pan so you can tighten up those seat pan lock nuts. Here's a shot of the seat with a slight gap in front of it. You need to be able to put this wrench in there to tighten those nuts down, so make sure you give yourself enough clearance. we're going to drill some pilot holes in just the seat, just the fiberglass seat, about 1.5 inches back, spaced evenly apart. Now, wherever you drill these, make sure the metal and the fiberglass contact each other. And the same on the rear, where the metal seat pan brace hits the seat, you're going to mark those with a paint pen or a scribe. Now take that seat strap back off, and you're going to drill these holes out in just the seat strap on the back and just the fiberglass seat up front. So we're going to do a 5/16 pilot hole here. This is going to drill those 2 holes you marked with a 5/16, or excuse me, 5/32 is a pilot hole, 5/32 pilot hole, and then you're going to finish those off with a 5/16. So here we're drilling those out again with the 5/32 drill bit, the 2, and then we're going to finish those off with a 5/16 drill bit. These are going to be for your rubber rivet nuts. Now here we're drilling out the back of the seat strap with the smaller of the 2, the 5/32 bit. We're going to drill those pilot holes out with the 5/32 that you marked. Make sure you marked them at the point where they meet the fiberglass. And we're going to drill out both sides of those. Now it's important that you wait to paint your seat. Now here's the shot of the larger drill bit, the 5/16 drill bit, finalizing those holes. Make sure you don't paint the seat until later. You want to do that after this assembly. It's good to do your fitment without paint first. So here's someone sitting on the bike. It's good to have someone sit while you mark the second holes in the back of the seat and the second holes in the front of the seat pan to make sure the weight is on and the rubber blocks in place. Now here I've showed it off the bike, but you want to mark those rubber blocks where they make contact on the seat pan and on the seat. When they're in the right position, mark those for later, so for later when we can glue them down. So if the seat is in position and there's weight on the seat so that it's properly sat down into its location, you're going to mark the front of the seat pan where you drilled those holes. So now you're going to mark those with a scribe or a paint pen, both front holes, and then the same thing on the rear, on the seat strap where it meets the seat. Now it's important you put some weight on the seat so that it settles into position. Here we're marking with a scribe the seat where we're going to drill out the seat itself. This is to make room for the rivet nuts. Once you've marked those, you can take it back apart and drill the seat with the smaller of the bits, the 5/32, and then you can finish it off with the 5/16. And here we're drilling the seat pan on the holes that you marked as well with the smaller 5/32 bit, and then you're going to finish it off. Once they line up correctly, you're going to finish that off with the 5/16 bit. Here we're finishing it off. Now for the and here we're drilling out the strap. Once those all line up and your rubber blocks have been marked, you're going to sand down the powder coat off the seat pan, and you're going to spray these rubber blocks with some 3M adhesive. Get yourself some 3M adhesive. The Super 77 works really well for this. Spray some adhesive to the bottom of the rubber blocks and attach those to the seat pan. Now we're going to put the rivet nuts in place, the 8/32 by 1/2 inch flange button head cap screws and the rivet nuts. It's good to use some thread lock on this because you don't want to over tighten these. Pop the rivet nuts through from the top, make sure they go through the seat strap, and you can tighten those down a little bit. Don't tighten them up too much yet. Make sure everything's in place before you tighten them up. Here's a shot of them tightened up and squeezed, sandwiched them together. And the same thing on the back. You're going to put the rubber rivet nuts as well through the back of the seat. Here's a shot of the front, sandwiched down, and you can tighten those down with the Allen screw. Now these are button heads so that we can glue the foam on top. Here they are sandwiched in place. Now test fit your seat, make sure everything fits properly, and then we can go ahead and glue the foam down. Once everything fits and everything's tightened up and your seat looks good, we're going to go ahead and glue the foam to the seat. Now the Super 77 3M glue works really well, as well as some rubbing alcohol and some Glue Gone. We're going to clean the seat thoroughly. You don't have to sand it. Actually, a glossy surface is nice. flip the foam over and spray the bottom with the Super 77, and you can go ahead and stick this down. Don't worry about getting the glue comes out the edges. You can clean it up with Glue Gon. Make sure you stick this down nicely. If you do it slowly, you can peel it back off if you don't get it quite right the first time, but peel it off real slow so it doesn't tear. And you can clean up the edges with Glue Gon after the fact to get the remaining glue off. Now we're going to put the tail light back on. And now this is after, obviously, we put the foam and the taillight on after you've painted the assembly. So here's where you marked earlier. You can sand that fiberglass down and sand the powder coat off the bracket and use the provided two-part epoxy that we use. This stuff is really important. It's really strong. So you want to mix this up, and it only has a few minutes, so you want to do this pretty quickly. Mix that up with a stick on it and spread it on the bracket. Put it in place and put your rivet nuts through the top and sandwich those down. And here it is in place, locked with the rivet nuts from the top, or with the lock nuts from the button head cap screws from the top through the rivet nuts. Now here's a wiring diagram for your taillight. You may want to pause here so you can wire up your taillight to the existing harness on the bike. It's a pretty simple setup. Now if you're going to be installing the high pipe, the aluminum side cover with the high pipe, the aluminum side cover attaches with the thumb screws on the front, and if you're going to be using the air filter pointing down, you'll have to relocate the rectifier to the side of the battery box. But here it is in its standard location, the rectifier sandwiched through the aluminum pan into the battery box, as well as attached with the thumb screws up top. And then on the side, if you're going to be doing the high pipe option, you can download the file from our website that shows a template to cut where to cut the aluminum bracket. Now you can cut this with a Dremel tool or a cutoff and then sand it with sandpaper 80 grit to smooth the edges. Now use the template as a guide, but don't use it for final fitment. Make sure you put your high pipe on with the included stainless steel strap to the bracket shown. And you're going to attach it in place, and then make sure, here's the bracket shown in place with the stainless steel strap we provide for the high pipe option. And that bracket is going to hold it in place. Then fit your side cover up and make sure your aluminum side matches parallel with the exhaust. And here it is with the heat shield in place as well. And then with the seat assembly back on, it goes over the top of that. Now, if you're going to be using, you're going to want to attach the air filter with the rubber elbow, with the silicone elbow. You're going to want to cut the end off of this, and with the tape provided, make sure you cut it in increments so that you can make sure it fits correctly. You can mark it with a paint pen before cutting it with a razor blade or an X-Acto. Now, we include an extra hose clamp to attach it to the carburetor, and then the air filter comes with the clamp to attach it to the air filter itself. All right, so like I said, the chain drive conversion was in another video, and the remaining assembly videos are basically the CS1 assembly videos. This just goes over the differences between the Cafe and the Tracker. So stay tuned for more.